We always tend to forget how unique we are. We often act under our shadows and thereby lose ourselves. We forget to take a moment to reflect on what makes us special. What do we love doing? And what comes naturally to us? More than finding ourselves, we tend to lose ourselves. Remember, there is no one else on earth like you. Let me take you to a story. I have a letter from Mrs. Edith of Mount Airy, North Carolina. As a child, I was extremely sensitive and shy, she says in her letter. I was overweight and my cheeks made me look even fatter than I was. I had an old-fashioned mother who thought it was foolish to make clothes look pretty. She always said wide will wear while narrow will tear, and she dressed me accordingly. I never went to parties, never had any fun, and when I went to school, I never joined the other children in outside activities or even athletics. I was morbidly shy. I felt I was different from everyone else and entirely undesirable. When I grew up, I married a man who was several years older to me, but I didn't change. My in-laws were a poised and self-confident family. They were everything I should have been, but simply was not. I tried my best to be like them, but I couldn't. Every time they made to draw me out of myself only drew me further into my shell. I became nervous and irritable. I avoided all friends. I got so bad I even dreaded the sound of the doorbell ringing. I was a failure, I knew it, and I was afraid my husband would find it out. So, whenever we were in public, I tried to be gay and overreacted my part. I knew I overreacted and I thought I would be miserable for days afterward. At last, I became so unhappy that I could see no point in prolonging my existence. I began to think of suicide. What happened to change this unhappy woman's life? Just a chance remark. Mrs. Allred continued to transform my whole life. My mother-in-law was talking one day about how she brought her children up, and she said, no matter what happened, I always insisted on their being themselves. That remark is what did it in a flash. I realized I had brought all this misery on myself by trying to fit myself into a pattern to which I did not conform. I changed overnight. I started being myself. I tried to make a study of my personality and tried to find out what I was. I studied my strong points. I learned all I could about colors and science, and I dressed in a way that I felt was becoming to me. I reached out to make friends. I joined an organization, a small one at first, and was petrified by a bit of fright when they put me on a program. But each time I spoke, I gained a little courage. It took a long while, but today I have more happiness than I ever dreamed possible. In rearing my own children, I have always taught them the lesson I had to learn from such a bitter experience. No matter what happens, always be yourself. This problem of being unwilling to be yourself is as old as history, says Dr. James Gordon, and as universal as human life. This problem of being unwilling to be yourself is the hidden spring behind many neuroses and psychoses and complexes. Angelo Patri has written 13 books and thousands of syndicated newspaper articles on the subject of child training, and he says nobody so miserable as he who longs to be somebody, something other than the person he is in body and mind. This craving to be something you are not is especially rampant in Hollywood. Sam Wood, one of Hollywood's best-known directors, said the greatest headache he has with aspiring young actors is exactly this problem of making them be themselves. They all want to be second-rate Lana Turners or third-rate Clark Gables. The public has already had that flavor, Sam would keep telling them. Now it wants something else. Before he started directing such pictures as Goodbye, Mr.
Gentlemen,
Chips.
This is your new colleague, Mr. Chipping.
How do you do?
I want you to show Mr. Chipping the ropes. As is customary, he is taking lower school for preparation. Good evening, Mr. Chipping. Anytime you need to see me. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, son. Lower school prep, eh?
And For Whom the Bell Tolls. Sam Wood spent years in the real estate business, developing sales personalities. He declares that the same principles apply in the business world as in the world of moving pictures cinema. You won't get anywhere playing the ape. You can't be a parrot. Experience has taught me, says Sam Wood, that it is safest to drop as quickly as possible people who pretend to be what they aren't. I asked Paul Boynton, then employment director for a major oil company, what is the biggest mistake people make in applying for jobs? He ought to know. He has interviewed more than 60,000 job seekers, and he has written a book entitled 6 Ways to Get a Job. He replied, "The biggest mistake people make in applying for jobs is in not being themselves. Instead of taking their hair down and being completely frank, they often try to give you the answer they think you want. But it doesn't work that way because nobody wants a phony. Nobody ever wants a counterfeit coin." A certain daughter of a streetcar conductor had to learn that lesson the hard way. She longed to be a singer, but her face was her misfortune. She had a large mouth and protruding buck teeth. When she first sang in public in a New Jersey nightclub, she tried to pull down her upper lips to cover her teeth. She tried to act glamorous, and as a result, she made herself ridiculous. She was headed for failure. However, there was a man in this nightclub who heard the girl sing and thought she had talent. "See here," he said bluntly, "I have been watching your performance and I know what it is you're trying to hide. You are ashamed of your teeth." The girl was embarrassed, but the man continued, "What of it? Is there any particular crime in having buck teeth? Don't try to hide them. Open your mouth, and the audience will love you when they see you are not ashamed." "Besides," he said shrewdly, "those teeth you are trying to hide may make your fortune." Cass Daly took this advice and forgot about her teeth. From that time on, she thought only about her audience. She opened her mouth wide and sang with such gusto and enjoyment that she became a top star in movies and radio. Other comedians tried to copy her. The renowned William James was speaking of people who had never found themselves when they declared that the average person develops only 10% of his or her latent mental abilities compared to what we ought to be. He wrote, "We are only half awake. We are making use of only a small part of our physical and mental resources." Stating the thing broadly, human individuals thus far live within their limits. They possess powers of various sorts which they habitually fear to use. You and I have such abilities, so let's not waste a second worrying because we are not like other people. You are something new in this world. Never before since the beginning of time has there ever been anybody exactly like you, and never again throughout all the ages to come will there ever be anybody exactly like you again. The science of genetics informs us that you are what you are largely as a result of 23 chromosomes contributed by your father and 23 chromosomes contributed by your mother. These 46 chromosomes comprise everything that determines what you inherit. In each chromosome, there may be anywhere from scores to hundreds of genes, with a single gene in some cases able to change the whole life of an individual. Truly, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Even after your mother and father met and mated, there was only one chance in 300,000 billion that the person who is specifically you be born. In other words, if you had 300,000 billion brothers and sisters, they might all have been different from you. Is all this guesswork? No. It is all scientific facts. I can talk with conviction about this subject of being yourself because I feel deeply about it. I know what I am talking about. I know from bitter and costly experience. When I first came to New York from the cornfields of Missouri, I enrolled in the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. I aspired to be an actor. I had what I thought was a brilliant idea, a shortcut to success, an idea so simple, so foolproof, that I couldn't understand why thousands of ambitious people hadn't already discovered it. I will study how the famous actors of that day got the effects. Then I would imitate the best points of each one of them and make myself into a shining, triumphant combination of all of them. How silly, how absurd. I have to waste years of my life imitating other people. Before it penetrated through my thick misery that I had to be myself and that I couldn't possibly be anyone else. That distressing experience ought to have taught me a lasting lesson. Charlie Chaplin, Will Rogers, Gene Autry, and millions of others had to learn the lesson I'm trying to tell you. They had to learn the hard way just as I did. When Charlie Chaplin first started making films, the director insisted on Chaplin's imitating a popular German comedian of that day. Charlie Chaplin got nowhere until he acted himself. You are something new in this world. Be glad of it. Make the most of what nature gave you. You can sing only what you are. You can paint only what you are. You must be what your experiences, your environment, and your heredity have made you. For better or for worse, you must cultivate your own little garden. For better or for worse, you must play your own little instrument in the orchestra of life. As Emerson said in his essay on self-reliance, there is a time in every man's education when he arrives at the conviction that envy is ignorance, that imitation is suicide, that he might take himself for better, for worse, as his portion. That though the wide universe is full of good, no kernel of nourishing corn can come to him, but through his toil bestowed on that plot of ground which is give to him to till. The power which resides in him is new in nature, and none but he knows what that is which he can do, nor does he know until he has tried. If a poet says it, if you can't be a pine at the top of the hill, be a scrub in the valley, but be the best little scrub by the side of the rill. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a bush, be a bit of the grass. We can't all be captains. We've got the crew. There's something for all of us here. There's big work to do and there's lesser to do, and the task we must do is the near. If you can't be a highway, then just be a rail. If you can't be the sun, be a star. It isn't by the size that you win or you fail. Be the best of whatever you are. Remember, let's not imitate others. Let's find ourselves and be ourselves. So, be true to yourself, embrace your uniqueness, and always strive to be the best version of yourself.